On set, Keanu Reeves doesn't talk about fame. He talks about people. Between takes, he listens more than he speaks. He watches how others move, how they hold silence, how they fill a room without saying a word.
A film or tell a story. And so when you say these years and the amount of people that I've met.
He doesn't just act. He absorbs. Across decades of interviews, behind-the-scenes moments, and quiet conversations, he's pointed to the performers who reshaped the way he understands cinema itself. Not as spectacle, but as presence. Not as performance, but as transmission. They taught him how stillness can carry weight. How transformation begins before the camera ever rolls. How action can mean something beyond choreography.
George Carlin.
George Carlin, did you get Carlin's? Oh, I'm so jealous. I'm such a fan.
Yeah, he is beautiful.
From late nights studying old performances to standing beside legends on modern sets, Keanu built his craft through observation, not imitation. So tonight, subscribe as we step into the 7 men who didn't just influence Keanu Reeves. They built the foundation he still stands on. 7. Jack Nicholson. When Keanu Reeves speaks about Jack Nicholson, he doesn't describe a style. He describes a choice. Nicholson never approached a scene looking for safety. He walked in looking for the moment where the character might lose control, and then he stood there without blinking.
Have you ever had a single moment's thought about my responsibilities? Have you ever thought for a single solitary moment about my responsibilities?
Keanu studied how Nicholson could live in 2 worlds at once. The familiar and the frightening. The charming neighbor and the unpredictable stranger. A raised eyebrow could feel playful. The same look, 1 second later, could feel like a warning. It wasn't chaos. It was precision disguised as wildness.
You can't handle the truth! Son, we live in a world that has walls, and those walls have to be guarded by men with guns. Who's gonna do it? You? You, Lieutenant Weinberg? I have a greater responsibility than you can possibly fathom. You weep for Santiago and you curse the Marines. You have that luxury. You have the luxury of not knowing what I know, that Santiago's death, while tragic, probably saved lives, and my existence, while grotesque and incomprehensible to you, saves lives. You don't want the truth because deep down in places you don't talk about at parties, you want me on that wall. You need me on that wall.
Nicholson didn't protect the audience from discomfort. He invited them into it. He allowed himself to look excessive, vulnerable, even ridiculous, if that's what the truth of the moment demanded. From that, Keanu learned something fundamental. Restraint only carries weight when the audience believes you're capable of going further. Nicholson's performances showed him that great acting isn't about control alone. It's about the courage to stand at the edge and stay there. 6. Gene Hackman. When Keanu Reeves talks about Gene Hackman, he doesn't use words like icon or legend. He talks about belief.
During the strike, I get a second chance. I get recruited by Gene Hackman. He's playing Jimmy McGinty, the ex-famous Washington Sentinels coach.
Hackman didn't arrive on screen like a movie star. He arrived like someone you already knew. A voice that felt unpolished. A face that felt familiar. A presence that didn't demand attention, it earned it. Keanu studied the way Hackman stripped performance down to intention. No decorative gestures. No signals to the audience. Every line felt like a thought that had just formed, not one that had been rehearsed. What fascinated him most was the tension beneath the surface. Calm that could turn cold. Warmth that could become a warning. Hackman showed him that unpredictability doesn't come from being loud. It comes from being honest. From that, Keanu learned how to build characters that feel steady on the outside and dangerous in the spaces you can't quite see. The kind that make an audience lean forward trying to figure out what's really there. 5. Robert De Niro. When Keanu Reeves talks about Robert De Niro, he talks about Disappearance. De Niro didn't step into characters. He reconstructed himself around them. The posture changed. The rhythm of speech shifted. Even the way he occupied space felt like it belonged to someone else entirely.
But look, I figure it this way. Better to be king for a night than schmuck for a lifetime.
Keanu saw something deeper than transformation. He saw a system. Preparation wasn't a ritual. It was a gateway. De Niro did the work long before the camera ever turned on, so that when the moment arrived, nothing felt planned. The character could breathe. The scene could move on instinct. What stayed with Keanu most was the precision. Not just in the explosive moments, but in the quiet ones. The pauses between words. The stillness between actions. De Niro showed him that intensity doesn't have to announce itself. It can live in silence. From that, Keanu learned that true commitment isn't about becoming someone else. It's about building a version of yourself so specific, so grounded, that the performance disappears, and only the person remains. 4. Clint Eastwood. When Keanu Reeves reflects on Clint Eastwood, he talks about economy. Eastwood never filled a scene with more than it needed. A glance instead of a speech. A pause instead of an explanation.
Marshal, what do you say I done? You don't remember me, do you? No. When you hang a man, you better look at him.
Keanu studied how silence could become a form of pressure. How stillness could carry authority without raising its voice. In Eastwood's characters, nothing was wasted. Every movement felt deliberate. Every moment felt chosen. What stayed with him was the idea that action doesn't need decoration. It needs purpose. When Keanu began shaping his own approach to physical roles, he returned to that simplicity. The hero who lets behavior reveal belief. The code that's expressed through choices, not declarations. Eastwood showed him that presence isn't something you perform for the camera. It's something the camera discovers. From that, Keanu learned to trust restraint. To let the smallest gesture hold the weight of a scene. To understand that authenticity doesn't come from doing more. It comes from leaving less behind. 3. Al Pacino. When Keanu Reeves talks about Al Pacino, he talks about change you can watch happening. Pacino didn't transform characters in grand gestures. He let it unfold in fragments. A look that lingered too long. A voice that slowly lost its warmth. Keanu studied how Pacino mapped emotion across time. How a man could begin a story open and human, and end it hardened without ever announcing the shift. What fascinated him was Pacino's control of scale. In close moments, he could draw the camera inward. In wide spaces, he could fill the frame without raising his voice. Pacino showed him that intensity isn't about volume. It's about placement. The whisper that carries farther than a shout. The pause that lands heavier than a line. For Keanu, that became a lesson in balance. You could be a presence and a craftsman at the same time. A star and a student. Ambitious without apologizing for it. 2. Marlon Brando. When Keanu Reeves reflects on Marlon Brando, he talks about permission. Brando didn't just change how characters were played. He changed what actors were allowed to be. Before him, the screen often asked for polish. Brando brought something rougher. Breath instead of projection. Impulse instead of presentation. Keanu studied the way Brando let imperfections remain in the frame. The slouched posture. The unfinished sentences. The moments that felt more discovered than designed. What stayed with him was Brando's refusal to protect his own image. He allowed himself to look uncertain, uncomfortable, even small, if that's where the truth of the scene lived. But Keanu also noticed the cost. The distance from the industry. The weight of choosing freedom over approval. From Brando, he learned a balance. You could honor authenticity without turning it into a battle. Brando showed him that real power on screen doesn't come from control. It comes from access to something honest, unpredictable, and human. And once the audience feels that, they never forget it. 1. River Phoenix. When Keanu Reeves speaks about River Phoenix, his tone changes. Not analytical. Not reflective. Personal. Phoenix wasn't someone he studied from a distance. He was someone he stood beside. On set, Phoenix didn't seem to search for emotion. It arrived with him. Every moment felt unguarded. Every reaction felt immediate, like something happening for the first time. Keanu watched him work and realized that some people don't perform feelings. They allow them. What Phoenix carried wasn't just skill. It was openness. A willingness to step into a scene without armor. When Phoenix was gone, the lesson didn't disappear with him. Keanu began to see the craft differently. Not as a career to build, but as something fragile. Something borrowed. From Phoenix, he learned that talent isn't just something you use. It's something you protect. Because not every gift lasts long enough to become a legacy. Keanu Reeves didn't shape himself by chasing fame. He shaped himself by paying attention. To fearlessness. To restraint. To discipline. To vulnerability. And finally, to loss. These 7 men didn't give him a style. They gave him a standard. A way to move through cinema without demanding it move around him. If you believe the greatest stories in Hollywood are the ones told quietly, subscribe for more journeys into the actors and performances that don't just entertain. They endure.